For 2 millennia, 3 digits have struck fear into the hearts of millions. 666. We've seen it in horror movies, heard it in heavy metal songs, and read it in doomsday predictions. It is universally known as the number of the beast, a sign of the ultimate evil, the Antichrist, destined to rule the world in the final days of humanity. But what if everything we think we know about this number is entirely wrong? What if we've been reading a 2,000-year-old text completely out of context? To understand the true meaning of 666, we have to forget about the future. We have to travel back to the late 1st century. Imagine a world where your religious beliefs are a capital offense. A world where the government demands absolute loyalty to a living man who calls himself a god. This was the reality for the early Christians living under the shadow of the Roman Empire. Our story begins not in hellfire, but on a desolate, rocky island in the Aegean Sea called Patmos. Here, a man named John is living in exile. The year is roughly 95 AD, during the reign of Emperor Domitian. John is isolated, traumatized, and writing a letter to 7 churches in Asia Minor. This letter is the book of Revelation. But John has a massive problem. If Roman authorities intercept a letter openly calling for the downfall of the empire, it means instant execution for him and anyone who reads it. He needed a way to communicate a message of resistance and hope without getting his friends killed. He needed a code. The solution John used wasn't magic. It was a common literary device of the ancient world called Gematria. In ancient Greek and Hebrew, there were no separate symbols for numbers. Instead, letters doubled as numbers. Alpha was 1, beta was 2, and so on. This meant that every word had a numerical value. You could add up the letters of your name and get a number. Gematria was used in everyday life, in graffiti, and in poetry. Archaeologists have even found graffiti in Pompeii that reads, "I love her whose number is 545. It was a secret language hidden in plain sight. John utilized this ancient encryption to hide the identities of his enemies. When he writes about a horrifying beast rising from the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns, his original audience didn't picture a literal monster. They understood the imagery. The sea represented the Mediterranean. The beast was the Roman Empire. The 7 heads represented the 7 hills of Rome, or perhaps 7 specific emperors. John was writing political dissent masked as apocalyptic visions. It was the ancient equivalent of an encrypted underground zine. But the climax of his code is found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. "Let the one with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. He explicitly tells the reader, this is a math puzzle. It's not a demon, it's a specific human being. But to figure out who, we have to look back a few decades before John wrote his letter, to a night when the world literally caught on fire. The year is 64 AD. The heart of the greatest empire on earth is burning. The Great Fire of Rome rages for 6 days, obliterating massive sections of the city. The emperor at the time is Nero. Rumors quickly spread among the devastated populace that Nero himself started the fire to clear land for a massive new palace. Facing a furious mob, Nero needed a scapegoat, and he needed one fast. He found the perfect target in a small, misunderstood, and highly suspicious religious sect, the Christians. To the Romans, Christians were bizarre. They didn't worship the state gods, which was seen as treason. They talked about eating the body and drinking the blood of their savior, leading to wild rumors of cannibalism. They were outcasts. The Roman historian Tacitus, who was no friend to Christians, documented what happened next. Nero didn't just execute them. He turned their deaths into horrific theatrical spectacles. Christians were covered in the skins of wild beasts and torn apart by dogs in the arena. Others were nailed to crosses. Most chillingly, Nero had them covered in pitch, nailed to poles and set on fire to serve as human torches, illuminating his garden parties at night. This was a level of state-sponsored terror that shattered the early Christian community. The trauma of the Neronian persecution left an indelible scar on the collective psyche of the early church. Nero became the absolute embodiment of evil, the ultimate adversary of Christ. He was the beast in human form. Even after Nero committed suicide in 68 AD, the terror didn't end. A widespread rumor known as the Nero redivivus myth began to circulate. People believed that Nero wasn't actually dead, or that he would return from the dead, leading an army from the east to destroy Rome. This fear of a returning, demonic emperor haunted the early Christians. By the time John is writing Revelation on Patmos, decades later under Domitian, the memory of Nero's burning human torches is still fresh. Domitian was also demanding to be worshipped as a god, reviving the nightmare. John's visions are steeped in this historical trauma. The violent imagery, the rivers of blood, the terrifying beasts. This isn't just an active imagination. It's PTSD captured on parchment. When John warns of the beast, he is warning of the tyrannical, bloodthirsty nature of the Roman state, a state that had already proven it would happily slaughter them. He is assuring his underground network that despite the overwhelming power of Rome, their God will ultimately bring justice. And he signs this warning with the ultimate symbol of their trauma, the number 666. So, how does the math actually work? Let's decode the beast. Remember, John is writing in Greek, but his thought process is deeply rooted in Jewish tradition and the Hebrew language. If you take the Greek title, Nero Caesar, Neron Kaiser, and transliterate it into Hebrew characters, you get Nun, Resh, Wa, Nun, Kof, Samek, Resh. In the Hebrew numbering system, Nun is 50, Resh is 200, Wa is 6, Nun is 50, Kof is 100, Samek is 60, and Resh is 200. Add those numbers together. 50 plus 200 plus 6 plus 50 plus 100 plus 60 plus 200. The sum is exactly 666. To the first century Christian reading John's letter, the puzzle was easily solved. The beast was Nero, the ultimate symbol of Roman persecution. It was a way of saying the emperor is a monster without writing the emperor's name. If a Roman guard found the scroll, he'd just see a confusing collection of numbers in bizarre imagery. It was brilliant operational security, but history has a funny way of leaving breadcrumbs. If 666 equals Nero Caesar in Hebrew, what happens if we look at other versions of the ancient text? For centuries, scholars suspected the Nero theory was correct, but the definitive proof came from the sands of Egypt. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeologists excavated the ancient garbage dumps of Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, uncovering thousands of ancient papyrus fragments. Among them was Papyrus 115, one of the oldest known fragments of the Book of Revelation, dating back to the late 3rd century. When scholars translated the fragment containing chapter 13, they found something shocking. The number of the beast wasn't 666. It was written as 616. Was this a typo? A mistake by an ancient scribe? Actually, it's the smoking gun that proves the code. You see, the Greek spelling, Neron Kaiser, yields 666. But the Latin spelling of the name is simply Nero Caesar. If you transliterate the Latin spelling into Hebrew, dropping the final N, which has a value of 50, the math changes. 666 minus 50 equals exactly 616. Scribes copying the manuscript for Latin-speaking Christians updated the math so the code would still point to the exact same person. Both 666 and 616 are the same password, just in different languages. The target was always Nero. But what about the mark of the beast? Revelation says that no one could buy or sell unless they had the mark on their right hand or forehead. Modern conspiracy theories have linked this to barcodes, microchips, and digital currency. But again, look at the first century reality. In the Roman Empire, commerce and religion were deeply intertwined. Trade guilds held banquets dedicated to pagan gods. If you refused to participate, you couldn't do business. More importantly, Consider the money itself. Roman coins featured the face of the emperor, often surrounded by inscriptions declaring him to be divine, the Son of God. For a strict monotheistic Christian, carrying and using these coins was a form of daily, unavoidable idolatry. It was a constant reminder of the state's power. The mark wasn't a physical tattoo. It was a symbol of allegiance. To participate in the Roman economy, you had to interact with the imperial cult. You had to touch the image of the beast. Furthermore, during times of intense persecution, Roman authorities demanded that citizens possess a libellus, a physical certificate proving they had made a sacrifice to the Roman gods. Without this document, you could be arrested, executed, or completely shut out of the marketplace. You literally could not buy or sell without proving your loyalty to the state religion. John's imagery of a mark on the hand or forehead is a dark parody of Jewish tradition. In Judaism, the faithful bind the words of God to their hands and foreheads in small leather boxes called tefillin as a sign of complete devotion to Yahweh. John is saying that those who compromise with Rome, those who participate in the imperial cult to save their businesses or their lives, have replaced the mark of God with the mark of the empire. They have given their allegiance to the beast. It was a stark, terrifying economic reality, not a science fiction prophecy. So how did we get from a brilliant first-century anti-Roman code to modern fears of a global Antichrist? The answer lies in the fall of the Roman Empire. As centuries passed, Rome collapsed. The immediate, terrifying threat of emperors like Nero and Domitian faded into the past. Christianity went from being a persecuted underground sect to the official religion of the empire. As the political context disappeared, the Book of Revelation lost its original meaning. Later generations of Christians, living in different times of crisis, looked at John's vivid, terrifying imagery and assumed it must be about their own future. During the Middle Ages, the Pope was called the Antichrist by reformers. During World War II, it was Hitler. During the Cold War, it was the Soviet Union. Every generation projects its own fears onto the blank canvas of John's apocalyptic code. The original historical reality was buried under centuries of changing theology. Today, the number 666 remains a powerful cultural symbol, a testament to the enduring power of ancient texts. But when we strip away the Hollywood movies and the doomsday prophecies, the truth is perhaps even more compelling. The Book of Revelation is a survival manual written by a traumatized man, trying to give hope to a persecuted minority. It's a testament to human resilience in the face of absolute tyranny. The number 666 is not a threat from the future. It is an echo from the past, a reminder of a time when declaring your faith could cost you your life, and when standing up to an empire required writing in code. The beast was real. It ruled from Rome, and it is dead. The code has been broken.